Hi everyone, welcome to Women in Finance. My name is Nastasia Aronsa, and as you may know, this is season 2. We had season 1 with the episodes taking place in 2020 with the likes of Chantal Marks from F&B Wealth and Investment. We had Anthea Gardner from Cartesian Capital, and also had interesting conversations coming through from some of the men who wanted to be part of the conversation, the likes of Banang Mahale, Temba Baloy. And the reason they participated is that we were trying to move away from creating an echo chamber amongst ourselves as females talking about issues without necessarily involving some of the men who sit in those executive board levels and who could also help us make those strides and those dents. So we're kicking off season 2, episode 1 with Carmen Mpelwane from ABSA Asset Management. You've seen her on various platforms, SABC, Business Day TV. She's also done JSE Stock Picks, so definitely a familiar face. Other than that, if you don't know her, hopefully this conversation will paint some color in terms of her journey, and then hopefully have a positive impact in some of the learnings that she will share. Carmen, thank you so much for making time.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you? So I must tell the audience something. So generally when I speak to you for like market, commentary, I only get to speak to you when we're about to go on air. And the people who generally get to chat to you and also probably, ad-lib a little bit with you, just get the conversation going, are the guys on the back end, on the technical side, which is always such a pity. However, I do hope that at some point you and I will actually get to meet in person. However, let's start talking about your journey as to get to portfolio manager. Like I mentioned, people see you on our screens. They've seen you on various platforms. Where did it all start?
Sure. Okay. Well, I think in a nutshell, I am a born and bred Cape Townian, but I've realized very early into my varsity career that if I was going to succeed in the industry that I was heading in, which was in finance at that time, that I needed to move to Johannesburg. So I have been here for about 15 years now, based in Johannesburg. And yeah, I think, where did it start? It started in 1980 when I was born. No, I joke. So let's go back to, I think, when I had my first failure in life. That's the way I put it. And I decided to go to varsity and study chemical engineering because I deemed it one of the hardest degrees to do. And so my personality lends itself to that. And after my first year, I was failing hopelessly, and I realized that I needed a big change. First time I had to ask someone for help, and that's what I did. I went to Career Advising Center, and they gave me what I thought was the next best option with what I could do, which was business science. So I did business science at UCT, the finance and CA option. And I went on to do my articles at Deloitte in Cape Town. And as I mentioned, shortly after qualifying as a CA, I headed up to Johannesburg. And I've been in finance and investments for the last 14 years, yes.
Oh, wow.
So that's me in a nutshell from a professional perspective.
And the challenges you experienced, I mean, I can imagine, the transition, say, from varsity into the working world. What was that like? And also, navigating your way across an office workplace environment.
I think I want to bring up 2 points. The one is, people talk a lot about gender inequality, but I've sort of been settling on a cultural inequality, which I think for me was one of the biggest hurdles. And let me just flesh it out a little bit. The way that I experienced it was that, I come from a colored background, and the way that I was brought up was to respect my elders, not talk back. If you have something to say, make sure that it's neatly packaged and that you've researched everything before you go out and talk. And I think once you enter the investment industry, it's the complete antithesis of that. that you have to speak out. You have to have an opinion. You have to have an opinion off the cuff as well. So you can't have it neatly packaged. You are mandated to challenge your peers, and your peers may be people who have been in the industry for 20, 30 years. So for me, I think that was probably the biggest hurdle, to realize that you have boundaries, but you also have to ensure that you have a voice. It's probably the key thing, I think, in as a woman, number one, but especially in this industry, to gain respect from your peers, to get respect from your clients, is to be able to talk from an informed perspective, but a confident perspective. So that was the key challenge for me. I think the second part is definitely also probably related to my background, but to know what's out there. I struggled when banking or investments or the finance industry. It is so broad. There are so many different positions. Even now, I am discovering new roles that, I could have entered back in the day as a junior if I'd wanted to. But I think the key thing, and I've heard it from lots of people, is about speaking to those who are in the industry, which is hard when you don't have a family that's been in the industry, or you don't have a group, a peer group that, have been in the industry, because all my peers, we are starting off from the same base. Mostly women, obviously women of color. So the struggle is real. The struggle is so real. But in order to get there, there are certain platforms, I think, now that give you that ability in terms of different foundations and societies, etc., and associations. But those were my two biggest hurdles getting into the role that I'm currently in and getting into the industry.
It's so interesting because I found when I started in the industry, I didn't have like anyone to share advice with me, teach me how to negotiate, or teach me how to go to my line manager and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Can I look at doing that? So it was that one was a bit of a lesson for me. And I'm wondering whether when you look back or you have conversations with some of the young people who are in the industry now or coming in, do you get a sense that it's getting easier?
It's so hard to say because I only get the tail end of the young people coming in. And I say tail end because they've probably been through varsity and they're just starting in their careers. So it's those few that have managed to get their first foot in. So I cannot speak from a perspective of, let's say, a matriculant, because I haven't engaged with matriculants lately, but I am always enthusiastic to speak to juniors in my industry. And I shudder to say that because I still think I'm a junior. I feel junior. But I am so heartened by listening to the people that are starting out in the industry. So they've qualified, they've done articles, etc., that they've needed to, and now they're trying to find their place. I found that they are more outspoken, which I can appreciate. I found that they are more willing to step outside of the box or put themselves outside of their lane, should I say. And for me, that is so heartening. But I found that that's more so with men, junior men, than it is with junior women. So it feels like the trend is still there. Women still are trying to find their voice, trying to get the confidence. And that for me is scary, that we are still here at a point where I would have hoped the floodgates would have opened. But we can go back to statistics like, for example, CA, right? You look at the qualification exams and you see what the statistics are, and the participation by Black people in general and then Black women specifically remains wholly immaterial. And I know that it doesn't happen overnight, but I would have expected from the time that I qualified 16, 17 years ago to now that we would have progressed a little bit more. But it doesn't feel like we can take the win yet.
That's true, because I was having a conversation with actually one of your industry colleagues, Patrice Rousseau from Ashburton. And I was saying to him, it's so interesting that it's 2020, August 10th, and we don't have a female business editor of a financial institution, not a financial institution, a financial media house in the country. Like if you think of the likes of MoneyWeb, Business Day, or whatever other publication or, media house, there's not a lot of females running the editor role. And it's such a pity because you want to have young financial journalists coming through, especially those who are, women, and especially of color, writing about a lot of the companies we report on, because I've learned to understand the interconnectivity of a lot of the products that we actually use and how the makers of those products or the suppliers are JSE listed companies or whatever the case may be, and them functioning properly impacts somebody from an employment perspective, etc. So it was just quite nice to understand that relationship. So I want to, take things back a little bit. So your title is portfolio manager. And the one thing that I also learned in the industry is that everybody plays a different role, whether you are an analyst or you are you're a stockbroker or whatever. If someone had to ask, what does a portfolio manager do, or rather,
day-to-day changes.
What's your day-to-day
I guess it's most probably more unstructured than a lot of people. So we don't have month ends, we don't have year ends, etc. But we do have day ends and quarterly ends and report backs to clients. But I think from a high-level perspective, I always say to people, what I do is I invest, and for a large part of my responsibilities relates to investing people's money that they invest in pension funds. It's not the only job, but just to give an extent of what we are doing, what we're trying to do, and what coverage we have. So my second hat that I wear, and it's literally just based on the structure of ABSA Asset Management, which is quite flat. So I also play the role of analyst. So in our team, we divide the different sectors of the JSE up. So I look after the healthcare and retail sectors. And so I will analyze those, create valuations, and have investment cases, and then basically sell the idea to my team. And then as a team, depending on what we call investment funds, you decide, what you're going to invest in. So a key part of my job on a daily basis is reading and filtering all that information. If you've ever been onto Bloomberg or FactSet or Reuters, you'll know that you can basically drown in the level of information that is there. But I think a big part of our responsibility is to be able to filter that, utilize it in our analysis, but then build a portfolio that will ensure that certain performance metrics are met. Basically, one is not to ensure that people don't lose money, but instead create money and make more money than they would in a different investment vehicle in certain circumstances. So I look at share price movements every day. I read the news and I filter that into my valuations. And then I also, co-portfolio manage and ensure that we balance our portfolio in a way that our investors, which is man on the street, they've worked hard for this money, to try to protect that for them and ensure that once they retire, they have a level of comfort that they would expect from an investment professional. Because anyone can try to be an investor, but I propose not everyone should do that, because it's really hard to do that on a daily basis and have another job. So that's why we're here to do that. And I guess other products that we also offer are things like unit trust, etc., that we offer out into the market. But that's the key, is to look after people's money and just have respect for the fact that, this is hard-earned money. People are entrusting you with that to ensure that you grow that for them and they benefit from it in the long run.
On that note, then, it sounds like such an enormous responsibility for you and your colleagues. Do you ever have the fear of getting a call wrong? Like you were wrong on your particular viewpoint of a certain company? Like, does that worry you that what if I'm wrong about the way the market
I think that's one of the biggest fears. So I still have my mini wins when I see a share price that we are invested in, the share price just shoots up, and I'm going to take my win, which is Mediclinic recently. We had a really good call on that, and we've made some really good money off it. But I'm not going to lie, failure is tough, and it is more a relative question of how bad the failure is, because you put your analysis into your model and you come out with what you expect the price to be. But let me tell you that even if you are 100% certain that all the factors are aligned for this share price to go to this number, the market has to agree with you. And the market is made up of so many people with different opinions, etc., that it's inevitable you're going to get a call wrong. It's just about how wrong your call is. And so I always go back to my first failure, because I think those are hard. Anyone that's out there, any failure in any aspect of life hurts. But what I've realized is that you've got to not be afraid to fail, because in those are learning moments. You are able to step back, regroup, analyze what went wrong, and then utilize that knowledge and wisdom going forward so that you don't repeat the mistake. So that's one beauty for me. The second is you are surrounded by a team of other professionals. And that's what we do. We challenge each other all the time. And I'm sure on the trading floor, etc., for traders in the stock market, the level of profanity is unbelievable. But it's not about taking it personally. And I'm not advocating for that by any measure. But what I am saying is that you've got to be an environment that asks you to put yourself outside of the box, to challenge your way of thinking, because we all have inherent biases, which comes into our valuations, which comes into our portfolio management. But as I've said, you've got to be able to be comfortable enough to put yourself out there, hopefully to your team first, and they can look for the holes in what you're saying. But also, secondly, when you are investing, you've got to have a level of confidence that what you are doing is correct. Like I said, there's bound to be failures, but it's about going back. We always say, look at his history. What did history tell us? We're going through this. Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? We are increasing interest rates at the moment. But what does history tell us? How do we react to what is happening now based on what's happened before? If you're not going to do that, then you are living in some vacuum and in a bubble, and you are for sure going to fail again, which you are obviously trying to avoid. But I think failure is inevitable. It's about how you receive it, how you process it, and how you move forward from there are the keys.
My next question is, how have you managed to be clear about your career path? Or, like, so for instance, when you're talking with your line manager or your previous managers, over the years, how have you managed to be clear about, negotiation for a higher salary, if that's what you want, or a different role, or you want to put your hand up for a team trip where they're going to be, doing a site tour, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
How do you manage to be clear
such a difficult question. As clear as mud, as they say, right? But I think one of the things that I've only learned it recently, because I've been through different phases in my career. I've tried to build my own business. I've gone back into corporate, etc. But one of the key things I found is that who you surround yourself with on a not just professional level, on a social level as well, is so key. Because if you can gain your confidence from your crew or your support system at home, or on a social level, it allows you to walk in with a different level of courage. If you are able to do this on your own, kudos to you, but that was never me. I've always needed to bounce things off people, get a better understanding. Talking about salary negotiations, I've had uncomfortable conversations with a group of 10 women where I'm like, guys, I don't know what to ask for. this is what I want, but I don't know how far I am from being realistic. Can we discuss salary? Because it's such a taboo to even go there. But if you don't know what people are earning who are on the same level as you, then you are not going to know what to negotiate for. I've spoken to recruiters where they've said, okay, Carmen, this is what we can get for you. And I'm like, are you joking? I'm earning more than that already. So that doesn't make sense. And you're the professional in the industry. How do you marry the two together? So I've thrown that out the window, and I got an idea of what people were earning, men specifically. And I decided to, for lack of a better phrase, put my big girl panties on, and I went in, and as ridiculous as it sounded, I was like, this is what I want. Person's eyes went this big. They were like, okay, I have to talk to people. Let me see, right? But I realized at that point that if I didn't ask what I thought I was worth, I was for sure after 3 to 6 months going to be like, you know what? I think I need to move somewhere else where I am valued and I'm paid what I am valued. So when I was trying to build my own business, one of the key things for me was that someone was never going to come to me to ask me for a higher salary because they thought that they weren't getting paid what they were worth. I was going to give someone what I knew they were worth. It was never going to be a show me what you're currently earning. Let's take it from there. So that was one aspect. Number two, in terms of negotiation, is to realize that, and I hope no one that in my company hears me say this, but no one really knows what they're doing, right? We have a professional understanding, but everyone is really fearful of making mistakes. It doesn't matter where you are. I believe even the CEOs of the biggest JSE listed still sit there, maybe some have imposter syndrome, and do question their decisions. So the point of what I'm trying to say is that everyone is fallible. Everyone is afraid of making mistakes. No one knows exactly how things are going to work out. So it's with that at the back of the mind is to go in there with that courage and say, what I'm about to say or asked is going to be put to someone who is also human. They're also a human being. They're also trying to figure themselves out. They're also trying to learn. So don't feel like you're going into someone who is perfect and has all the answers and is going to judge you. I think if you start from that base, then it makes it a little bit easier.
So I'm going to tell you, so in the media industry, there isn't a lot of transparency in terms of what other journalists or presenters or anchors earn. So you're going in blind and you can undersell yourself by a whole lot. And I then found out, I think it was 2 years ago, that a colleague who was doing the exact same thing that I was doing in the exact same time frame was earning twice as much as me. Like, literally, we do the same thing at the same time together. And he was earning twice as much as me. And there was nothing I could do about it because he obviously negotiated higher. But what helped him was that he worked for an international media organization. So he was getting paid in dollars. So obviously, in order for our company to try and get him to come join the team, unfortunately, they had to pay him that. But nobody thought, but wait, how does that make sense? Nastasia also does the same thing. They started off at the same time career-wise. In fact, they almost track each other at different movements, but we're paying him twice as much. So that still bugs me, how I will learn to deal with it at some point. How do you think having more women in the industry changes the portrayal of the finance industry? And on that note then, how do we empower the ones who are already in the industry and probably even thinking of wanting to leave because jeepers, it's so male driven and I've got to change my personality and
I'm still learning
something that I don't want to.
I am still trying to break out of the mold and say, you know what, I need help, right? And I realized that I am now unashamed to ask for help. I don't have limits in terms of the hierarchy where you are. Like I said, everyone is a human being. You can say no to me and walk away, and that's just fine. But if I don't ask, I'm never going to know what your answer is, right? But I know as someone coming into the industry, it's so much harder if you don't have a circle around, let's say, your parents or your uncles or your aunts who know people that can open doors for you. So it does become a little bit harder. I've also been in the position as a junior where I was like, I need a mentor. Like, if I email this lady, will she answer? I'm so embarrassed, whatever. And some have said no. They're like, I don't have the capacity. I don't have the time. And I've realized that for myself, when people now ask me, I need to know my boundaries because I only have so much time in a day, but I'm always willing to have at least one conversation. I'm always willing to listen. And like you were saying, talking about, comparisons of salaries, if I am in a circle of trust, I am willing to recommend as well and say, look, you're underselling yourself here. I can tell you that much, and this is kind of what you should do. But it's definitely about reaching back for those who are coming still to open up and smooth the path for them, because why force someone else to walk the same treacherous road as you when you've learned the lessons? I think that if that's what your aim is, it's so selfish. Rather smooth the path, allow someone coming behind you to also change their legacy one day, to change their way forward. So I definitely think that we need to assist where we can. And I know it sounds like a utopia, but that's my natural inclination. If someone needs assistance, I am more than willing to help. I've been through the drill. I am always honest about what I've been through. I'm always deliberate about what I do as well. So it's about continuously knocking until you find someone who's willing to open the door effectively.
So we've seen efforts to increase gender equality, whether you're looking at it from a corporate side or making it as a listing requirement, or we're seeing national government institutions trying to promote more women. I mean, from your opinion, what sort of policy or policies should we be thinking about to bridge that gap? I mean, I had a conversation with somebody who said it's actually quite useful where in your interview, you have a great spread of your interviewees, whether it's HR management, you're just seeing that gender equality. And that can also be helpful, especially if you're somebody who's coming from a very different culture perspective.
I haven't from a regulatory perspective, maybe on a softer side, what I've always believed, and I know that our government has attempted it before. I know King 4 tries to subtly introduce it from like a board perspective and management to ensure diversification, because that is the key problem. But I think the only way to not strong arm someone, but to kind of incentivize is with money. That's what it is, right? So whether it's a tax deduction or whether it is linked to someone's KPIs, like you're saying, from an HR perspective, your next few appointees need to be of a certain demographic, obviously from a quality level as well. But in my perspective, if it's not going to touch someone on either a growth level or a promotional level or a money in the pocket level, they're not going to do it. There's no other reason why anyone else is going to do it. So I don't know how you structure that, whether it's a, like I said, a tax incentive or a KPI that is put into your plan. It's so hard because we've tried to say, please do this. It will be for the betterment. And studies have shown that, right? Diversification, more women in senior level management makes for better earnings if you want to be that raw about it, and better performance for companies. But if there is no sort of prodding from the back or pulling from the front, then it's highly unlikely that's going to change.
If you had to advise your younger self, what would you say? And I'll share mine, right? If I could do it, if I could advise her, I would say to her, learn to pat yourself on the back And if you're looking for acknowledgement from anyone else but you, you're going to be in big trouble for a very long time.
One
so what would you say?
that I've now realized is that your own worst enemy, your own worst critic. Let me rephrase it. You're your own critic. Whatever you thinking someone else is thinking of you is probably not even close, right? Even if it is that, it's none of your business. That's their business. You got to focus on yourself, both from a growth perspective, but also what you achieve and the legacy you want to leave. But not forgetting, because I know we take ourselves so seriously times, especially as women, I forgot that you really got to celebrate the small things. Doesn't matter if it's a pat on your own back with whatever you feel is celebratory, but you know, we have those moments where there's a big award ceremony. No, that is not what it should be. You've got to take the small wins and you've got to celebrate them the way that you enjoy, because it gives you that incentive to continue to go. If you're going to keep waiting for the big, reveal or whatever, I can tell you by the time you get there, you're so exhausted, you don't even want to celebrate anymore. So definitely celebrate small wins, and remember that you are your worst thing that you'll ever come across.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making time to chat with us. And I do hope that a lot of people who are going to be listening to this and even watching it will find inspiration in many aspects that you have raised. That is Carmen Mpelwane from ABSA Asset Management. Remember to subscribe to our podcast, and next week we have an even great guest who will also weigh in on some of the issues. And again, this podcast is all about being solutions driven and talking about how we can bridge that gap and make a difference. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.